Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Sunflower Sutras. I'm your host, Tara. To get things started today, I would like to read a poem from the ancient Greek poet Sappho, The Cretan Dance. As the moon in all her splendor slowly rose above the forest, silent stood the Cretan women round the altar. Girdled close in their clinging tunics, made of some transparent fabric, traced the every curve and lissom of their bodies. With revering eyes uplifted to the round and rising planet, soon its drifting beams of silver lit their faces. Soft and clear its sphere effulgent, full defined above the treetops, steeped in pale, unearthly glamour all of the landscape. When the argent glimmer rested on the altar piled with garlands, and its glow unveiled the marble Aphrodite, linking hands, the Cretan women, moving gracefully with metric steps, began to dance a measure to the goddess. All so light, their feet unsaddled, pressed the velvet grass in treading, that they scarcely bruised its tender, blooming verdure. Slowly turning in a circle to the east, their voices chanted in a plaintive note the sacred ichthyphallics. Then they paused, their steps retracing toward the west, and answered strophe by antistrophe with choric tones accordant. With the aftersong epotic, standing all before the altar, lo, the hymn in praise of Paphos was completed. And with us today, from the garden of Emily Dickinson, we have a Terrianne Walling and a George Gerard, the founders of Purple Fire Publications.
Hi.
Hi.
So, I'm fine. How are you two doing? I hear that right now it's a bit of traveling for the both of you.
Yeah, actually right now we're sitting in the gardens at Emily Dickinson's house, which is really inspiring and really impactful. So we have that really cool vibe with us as we speak to you right now.
We're just really excited to be talking to you today a bit about our publication company and some upcoming publications we're working on and some submissions that we're looking for from poets and writers and people who want to give voice out there.
So I was reading your mission statement for your publication, and you make a really big point out of diversity in your submissions.
Yeah, our mission really is to just have other people's voices heard that don't, in general, get heard. People that feel stifled, like Emily Dickinson, who wrote, her whole entire life and wasn't really paid attention until after she died. We want to find those people and engage with them.
A big part of that, too, comes from our own collaboration and how Purple Fire Publications got started, in that in working together as individuals, we had to make sure that we were also operating from a place of respect and care and equality of each other's voice. And too often we've found that certain voices are able to be fostered and others operate through a whisper or in silence. And so our publication company hopes to give a safe space for people to give voice, really.
Now, did you two collaborate before forming the publication, or was this something that was in your minds for a while? Tell me a little bit more about the beginnings of the publication.
Well, initially George and I had met through an online writers forum. We just kind of put out, a call to collaborate. Both of us have been writers our whole life and just, felt this desire to work with another human. We started initially kind of just writing like a short story, a novel of some sort about interdimensional travel and going into the mind of a trauma person. And I'd actually done trauma study in my schooling, and we both figured that this little story we were writing was actually a lot more. And we started getting to know each other and talking about poetry, which we had both written our whole life, and decided to start collaborating in that way.
And so as we were collaborating, we also talked about streams of how people heal from trauma and how different areas of recognition and witnessing and addressing trauma can help people move forward. And in that space, we recognize this sense of equality that we're talking about in our mission statement.
Through poetry specifically and writing.
Yeah.
And we decided then to, start Purple Fire Publications, which is a big metaphor for both of us. like our writing world. It actually exists in our mind together. We've created this world where there's a spire in the center and purple and it flames up and all the words spiral around it. And as writers, you kind of jump into this world and have the words cling to your body and then out onto a page. Essentially, that's where the Purple Fire publication's name came from. And so we are inspired by the words and collaborative healing through writing.
My next question is, why focus so much on the trauma aspect and the healing aspect from the poetry?
I think that's the one thing that binds humans are these events of trauma. And some of them can be really, there's no level. So we don't like to see trauma as different levels, as one person's trauma is bigger than others. It's those events in life where you actually feel impacted in a way that banks in your subconscious, so you're unable to actually deal with it. So you live in this kind of perpetual inability to express yourself. So we try to help people specifically address these things, and it tends to come out really well through poetry.
Yeah, there's a aspect of trauma and memory that comes into play with this too, where traumatic recollections are fragmented and emotional and incomprehensible, but profoundly impacting on how we cope and how we react to things and how we care about certain things or how we avoid certain things. And in finding a space to address, poetry itself as a medium is quite powerful because as a format, especially in modernist, there's less structure and there's more openness, and you don't necessarily need a certain formalism. And at the same time, it has a neuro-linguistic property of being able to form language out of something that doesn't necessarily make sense.
What are your favorite aspects of having this publication?
That's a great question. Well, there are lots of great things. It's also kind of challenging in ways when you're working with another person in a different country to be able to collaborate. And, we both have our own side lives. Our publication company and our poetry and our writing and all that is something that we do at nighttime as people that can't sleep because we're writers. So we do a lot of work at night in that way. So there are many good things, but there are challenges to getting together with someone. But that's really a cool part of our world, right, is we can work with people in different countries. Like you, right now, we're in different places in the world, kind of, and it's kind of nice to be able to do that.
My favorite part is when we both are able to sit down on a shared surface of writing. There's a lot of great technology like that, like Google Docs, and we can both be in that same space, and there's a prompt of some sort that comes out as a feeling or just a start of writing, or we pick up on some point that we left off on, and there's the kind of vibration and connection that comes with our voices expressing. And that part to me is like magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we get to meet other people that, have the same feeling about it, or, they can't really say what it is that makes them want to write or what it is that inspires them, but they have this desire to write. And we want to help facilitate that a lot because I think some people just need encouragement. Our publication company isn't about in any way money. We will pay the people that write. It's not our main reason for existing. There's enough publication companies like that. We actually just believe in really fostering people's voices and having them be able to find the freeness that comes from being able to feel proud of themselves for putting their work out there.
Yeah, people have such incredible stories. Sometimes there's no confidence in their ability to express it, and they do, and it's pretty wonderful.
That's one of the great things is that we get to work with each other and we get to work with others that are, inspired to do so.
So this is a good point to ask about. You guys have recently published your second book. The name of that book is Tegera. So Terrianne, you are located in Canada, and George, you are here in the States. And Tegera was a project with an individual from Turkey. Tell me what that was like.
In our first book, we went to Turkey to give a presentation, and we had the fortune of meeting Ramazan Saral, who is our co-author, and we bonded in this recognition of each other's poetry and the types of expression in it and our voices each individually, and we wanted to all work together, and we kind of, in our story, recognize each other each as individual travelers who meet in this quiet forest space and start journeying together and through this world or universe really of Tegera.
Yeah, Tegera is a place of non-time. It's a place where all humans exist and lack existence at the same time. So you would travel through 7 different realms of reality. And what we did is that we collaborated with Ramazan through peer.in, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So it's like Skype, but without having to sign up. It's pretty awesome, actually. And so we would collaborate at night with him, and we took all of our poems from the past. We separate them into these 7 different realms of existence. So they are the heavy or the land, which is where people, like real existence of reality, where you feel the weight of reality pressing down on you as a human. And then you go into the forest, which is like classic, I guess, forest trope. Like you would go into the forest to find yourself, I guess, if you think of like Shakespeare and stuff like that. And then out of the forest, you've met these travelers, and you go to the seashore, and then you go into the sea, then you go to a mountain, and then you go to the sky, and then you're in this realm called the jellyfish realm. So the unknown, which is that, that time of really specialness when you're a writer and you just feel that time does not exist. Or not even a writer, just a human. Time doesn't exist in that realm. But we exist in all these realms simultaneously, so no one really gets stuck in a realm. You're just there. And while you're in there, you meet people. And that's what we did. The 3 of us met, and we made the narrative around us 3 as travelers with a story. There's an artist, Yarn Geyser is her name, and she did all the celestial art for the world of Tegera.
That sounds like a very kind of postmodern fantasy fairy tale. I like this idea.
Thanks. We just completed that one, so.
Now, what was the first book that Purple Fire published?
It's called Permeate and Penetrate, Trauma and Reformulation Poetry. And it was the book of theory, really, and process of that theory, in which 2 individuals who have suffered from trauma of some sort collaborate together, and each individual writes a poem of trauma. They share that poem of trauma with one another. And in the recognition of that trauma from each individual, the 2 are able to come together and deconstruct both poems to create a new poem from the original 2 poems of trauma. And by making that reformulation, they each individually take care of one another and address the traumas that were expressed.
Was this project something that you started the publication with that as your cornerstone project, or was this something where it had been in either of your minds for a while, even before the idea of Purple Fire was existent?
I was always breaking apart poetry and trying to reform it for some reason. This is something I was really interested in, but never did I think to work with another to form it in that way. And so Purple Fire, actually, to answer your question, came out of that idea. Actually, we saw a need to get that out there, and that was the first publication for our company.
And I believe when we met, you first conveyed the idea of reformulation to me, it was around making responses to Emily Dickinson. So.
We're in her garden. I'm still not over that.
It's a very resonant idea with me. It's really beautiful. Having gone through our process together, I felt like we've addressed many personal things through our writing in this way. And so we initially found this process in a very organic way, but then looked at it through the lens of literary trauma theory.
And wanted to take it further with the publication company. I think that answers your question. We might have went off a little bit.
Oh, no, that was really wonderful. Although, now I'm curious, when you started, did you have an end goal in sight?
I would say no.
Yeah, not explicitly.
No, like there's not, we had our mission statement, what we believed in and what we wanted to do, but we've never had like some kind of formulated plan, right? Like to me, that doesn't even work in my brain. I'm very sporadic in an organized way, if that makes sense. But I don't know, George, did you feel like you had some kind of plan?
I remember we had a conversation once where, in a very like abstract level, we talked about a desire to help others address trauma as a lifelong pursuit through care and recognition and hearing a voice. But it wasn't a explicit, hey, we need a publication company to make this happen, and this is a goal, and this is how we're going to scale our business, and like none of that.
Yeah, we weren't like world domination. We never thought that way. Yeah, no, we just, we really care for people. We care for writing, and we really believe in what we do. And we, whatever happens with the company, we believe it will organically grow. I guess we did have this idea of connecting people through an interactive map on our website, which we're still going to do at some point. Once we start getting more and more writers, we would like to connect them through like a hypertext interactive map of some sort so that people can really meet up with others that have the same resonation of soul. We do have goals and we do work on all of these things, I guess. I never really think about it, so it's really awesome that you asked that.
As publishers, you have a unique situation where, like with Tegera, you can contact and collaborate with people that you normally would have never met in normal day-to-day life. Is that something you had before the publication when you were both poets on your own accord?
I think the writing platforms played a role in that open connectivity across the globe, like writingforums.org, or I think that was the one we met on, has a fairly international audience. I feel like I've seen posts and stories and things like that from other people that were not necessarily from the States or from Canada. And so there was some aspect of exploration there. And so the sense of possibility that the entire world was open for collaboration with, and that there's a lot of universality in how people express. But it wasn't a prior experience in this space.
No, I think this has really allowed us to be able to do that. And we really hope that our publication company and, what we're doing allows that to happen as well. We're looking forward to that, to having people connect more. One of our main goals. I guess we have a lot of goals.
We have things we believe in.
Yeah.
As the website says.
Would you care to elaborate more on that?
I think fundamentally we want to make sure that as a platform of distribution, of production, we're bringing an opportunity for people to have a space that's safe and non-judgmental to express whatever it is they need to express. Ultimately, the values are for people to live free and to give them a space to do that.
It's my understanding that you actually have a call for submissions for your own project.
Yeah, so we have kicked off our first e-zine issue, and we have a call for submissions for editorials, so we are open to other formats. And right now it's on Instagram and Facebook and on our website, where there's a submissions page which you can submit through, but you can also email at contact@purplefirepublications.ca, and we'd love to hear what people are sending in. We pay for the submissions that we end up accepting, and right now we're still in a open call period and early reading, so it'll be a bit before we make our final selection.
Yeah, and if people are interested, they can go to purplefirepublications.ca. We also have an Instagram page where we put soul bites every day, which is just like people share little bits of poetry and we create art with them and we put those out. But most often we create our own little soul bites. So we love when other people submit these to us. Those are just put out there. We don't pay for the soul bites, but we do pay, like George said, for editorials or poetry or prose or fiction. And you can check that out on our website. We'd love to hear from anyone that feels inspired by what we're talking about with you right now.
Is this your first time treading into the waters of e-zines?
Yes.
Yes, it is. We're working on a book for an author right now named Niall Schofield. But besides that, this is our first time taking submissions, and we've had a really great response so far, so we're really looking forward to the first submission process and having the e-zine come out, and also, paying people for their work, because we actually see people are not given enough value for their work. And even though I know that's not the main goal of writers normally, it should be recognized. So that's important to us.
Yeah.
Well, as a writer, I appreciate that sentiment. How are you liking the submission process so far and the responsibility part of running your own publication?
There's a lot of interesting areas that we're learning about. The submission process has been wonderful because honestly the pieces we're receiving are beautiful and they're from a wide variety of places internationally. It's a very interesting experience of universality to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, it's been nothing but fantastic to hear these different voices with the same kind of feeling that runs throughout them. So I'm quite enjoying it. There's a lot, right? Like we have to go through all these pieces, but each time we love it so much. I see the name and I see these people's little bios, and I feel an immense joy, actually, and honor that people are sharing their work with us, to be honest with you. So it's wonderful.
Having been on the other side where either of us have submitted to magazines or put our work out there, there's a certain sense that you have to let go, and that you're opening yourself and you're making yourself vulnerable by sharing your work with others, even if, especially for something like where you have to be selected. So
yeah.
I think there's an appreciation from both sides for what that means.
Yeah, we're both writers when it comes down to it. So we do understand how much it takes to, take the step and the leap to put your work out there. Like, it's a lot. It's your soul. And so I think as writers and owners of a publication company, we can really understand that part.
Honestly, I have to say, it sounds like what you and George are doing. It just sounds like a real altruistic effort to your fellow writers. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a journey, and being connected to each of these individuals we get to meet and getting to work together, it feels right.
Yeah, and we really appreciate experiences like this. This is, when you put yourself out there, you get to talk to other people that feel the same way as you do, and it comes down to it, people just want to be heard. And that's really great for us too. We get to experience joy in doing that. There is parts of me that's getting something from this, but it's more like a collaborative work with other humans, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the people want to be heard.
Yeah.
Just as I do. And as George, we've talked about, we all want to be heard and seen.
On that note, it would do me a great honor if you, Terrianne, and George would read a couple of pieces for us here at Sunflowers.
I would love to do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read you one short poem that kind of quickly, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but in the book Tegera, it came out of the land, which is the heavy place. I think a lot of it has to do with me being a woman and me being unheard, I guess, for a large portion of my life. So this poem is in Tegera, and it's in the heavy. I'll read that for you. It has no name. From thousands of nameless ancestors, I hear the whisper scream, as the weight of being no word pushes me to my knees. To say the name is to conspire while others speak in vain, complain and hear the roars of those that hold the reins.
My poem is also from Tegera, and I believe it's in the air and space, but it possibly could be earlier. I'll just go for it. I see a dock, and at the end, sit two beings best of friends. The moon is out, a sliver in sky. Hands connect in soft moonlight. Their toes kick up, drop, suspend. They take their fingers and begin to send their love in words drawn in magic streams, suspended in this world of dreams.
And those are both pieces that can be found on Purple Fire Publications' newest book, Tegera.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to read.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for being on our program. And for our listeners out there, again, that is Purple Fire Publications, located in Saskatchewan, Canada. And they are currently looking for submissions for their new e-zine.
Thank you so much for having us. I just want to really quickly again encourage all writers out there and all poets and artists, people that have the desire to speak. Just go for it.
Whatever language is most natural to you, just go for it.
Thank you so much, Terrianne, and thank you so much, George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now for my favorite part of every episode. It is time to read our listener submission. This week's submission comes from Les Epstein. Les is an author of 8 plays and 2 operas that have appeared on stages across the U.S. Most recently, his play, Ira's Fantastical Ride Up New York 9, premiered at the Greenbrier Valley Theater, and his play, Thus Sludzarilla, at Virginia's Play to Stage. Les's work can also be found in the I Drum Periodically, Roselle Journal, Interstice, Sweater Weather, Mojave River Review, and Saudade. He is currently a teacher in Roanoke, Virginia. Ruby threw a Reuben on. As rain held off for another hour, Miranda's cornered cafe stood empty at the last Lynchburg strip. Before Highway and Blue Ridge Woods, each of its 16 tables covered with brown vinyl cloth, topped with white square menus, delicately placed to form plastic crosses, blessing tuna salad and boiled eggs. The once genesis of being heated into a yellow sun and served on the side. Minutes before the storm should settle in and Miranda calls for the sandwich, "Rhonda, throw a Reuben on!" Slathered rye oozes Thousand Island. God forbid she be an island short, lest she desecrate Kulikovsky of Omaha's gastronomic masterpiece. A winking nod to Reuben himself, cursed for his love of Bilhah. Poor Reuben loved one so vanquished, a heart adrift in some island for want of soothing hands. Or perhaps here is a great nod to Marjorie Rimbaud, sitting alone in Reuben's deli in the city. After nightly bowing to strangers deep in the proscenium, what amazing worlds a sandwich might rouse. So with mounds of beef laid to rest, capped by twice the needed kraut, and slices of Swiss ensuring the diner's holiness, Miranda calls for some fries. Eyeing the window for the chilling storm to come, Ruby pitches her work under the guidance of a fevered lamp. Behold, a sandwich. Alfred. May he whose presence dwells in this house rejoice you with sons and daughters. Therefore from this day God kept me short. That is how it all happened, I believe, in the Broad Street shull, a groom gladly called for a sweet blessing before a Broad Street crew, yowling about nuptials, and I, 14 years old, presumptuously draped about the shoulders in flowing white tallit, thrilled to see such a grossly handsome groom, smacked in the temple by a hail of almonds and raisins, a tender tumult, showering almonds about the ark, clinking against the blessed light, plunking rabbi and cantor, all in a sweet glow of a Shabbos spectacle, featuring Solomon's love gates, and so many nuts upon the bema, and how tall you were, smiling as mazels, boomed from the Broad Street shull crew, and how I wished some day to be tall like you, and that grossly handsome groom, so that tossed raisins would hit my knees, but never my temple, and how I swore my height would soon rise above yours, and you would look up, to fire nuts about my evolution. So it must have been then that God stroked his whiskers, and guessed that I'd be quite the homey groom, just tall enough, just brash enough, to embrace all almond shots. And lastly, a poem that has been featured in the Mojave River Review, A New Orleans Dive. Grief numbered the clouds as they were few. He numbered squatters on the stairs ragged. So from the hot stairs where the group feared the river, Gregor Grief, fully clothed, dove with Lauginus form into the big muddy. He passed the sign reading Love Wins, rumbled down molding wood, flew past the 7 men he spent nights wandering the quarter, and hit the water. Grief said, "Warm! It's all warm." He slapped his emaciated belly about the shallows. His blue shirt served as a life preserver. It puffed wide. Those passing in a nearby trolley might believe they witnessed a tiny blue whale. "You'll go down, Grief," shouted one of the remaining squatters. "God only knows what that will bring." "I'll be a bony rock in the river, an aquatic lover forever pressed in with ferns, and when the catfish nibble at my decaying toes, I'll bet it will tickle row by row," Grief replied, raising a palm. So no one swam after him. He was wanted only by the Mississippi. Grief dried by a Spanish plaza palm. A gentle breeze hummed through its leaves, and Grief considered one great breeze rising to take him palm and all. Thank you for submitting to us, Les. And if you want to submit to the show, or if you know of someone who might want to submit to the show, we're always taking submissions. I want your weirdest pieces. I want your blandest pieces. I want pieces that you don't think anyone could possibly care about. I want it all. A reminder that we now have a Facebook page that is Sunflower Sutras on Facebook. You can submit any pieces directly to our Facebook page. And if Facebook is not exactly your style, you are more than welcome to submit pieces to tara.bartley@yahoo.com. Thank you all for listening. So long, and farewell.